Gentlemen, welcome back to the Tiege Hanley Starting a Business, Building a Brand vlog. This one, big number 330. So in last vlog, I was at the Pete and Pedro warehouse and I did a quick little intro to the idea and concept of cash flow and why it's all about cash flow when it comes to being an entrepreneur. Well, in last vlog, in the comments, our boy and my friend Max Tuning said, or he had a business question, and it basically goes like this. He says, although I understand it, because Max has a few different brands. One is Sour Strips, another one is Edge Apparel, not Edge, that's Alex. He has Everforward Apparel, which is amazing. And I actually have some, and it's some of my favorite like joggers and sweatshirts. He makes incredible stuff. Anyway, here's the question. He says, although I understand it, I think it would be super helpful to many hopeful entrepreneurs to go more in depth on your thought process on cash flow and purchasing inventory. Not too much, not too little, and how you manage it as you scale business, as it's so important. And I just thought this was an amazing topic for today's video. I'm gonna spend a little bit of time and talk a little bit about cash flow. I made a few notes, and then get to some of your other business questions. Before we do, why don't you drop it like it's hot, because like I said, the value that we are trying to bring at the Tiege Hanley Starting Business Building Brand vlog is all about trying to help you, potential or future or current entrepreneurs, basically navigate some of the pitfalls that you're going to face or could potentially face, that we have faced, and how we kind of manage it. Well, cash flow is something that you will always have to deal with. It really doesn't matter what business you're going into. When you have or sell a product specifically, it's even more important. Now, e-products are a little bit different, but today I want to talk a little bit about kind of the thought process and mindset about how do you manage it, right? And when we talk about cash flow, it's, all right, so you've got a product, right? It costs money, you've got to buy it. So you outlay cash, you get it in your warehouse. Now, when it's sitting there, think of it as like dollar bills sitting on a shelf, right? Until you actually sell through that inventory, your cash, your liquid cash, or your credit is tied up, right? And you've got to make sure that you sell through it in order to recoup your money. Now, the idea is that you're buying this product for a specific dollar amount. And then depending on the margin, you're reselling it for some multiple of that. Now, if you're doing something and you're selling wholesale, the multiple isn't going to be as great as if you're doing something direct to consumer like Tiege Hanley, Pete and Pedro, or Sour Strips. Now, Max with Sour Strips, he kind of goes, that's primarily, well, he does two things, right? He wholesales it to the different vendors, but he also sells direct to consumer. Direct to consumer, you have a much better markup and margin as opposed to wholesale. The way that wholesale works, essentially in a very oversimplified manner, if I make this phone, Pixel for the record, I love my Pixel, for $100, and I want to get it into the retailer's hands to resell it, I'm going to mark it up typically like 100%. So I'm going to sell it to the store for $200, and then the store is going to mark it up another 100%. So end to consumer, this is going to cost around $400. Does that make sense? It cost me $100 to make it. I'm going to wholesale it for $200. They are then going to turn around and sell it for $400 because technically, generally, in a nutshell, it's like you're double. Basically, you double along the way. Now, if I were selling direct to consumer, if it cost me $100 to make and I'm still charging that $400, now I just made $300. So the margin, as you can see, is much better. But we're probably gonna be rolling with the cell phone idea and concept for the whole video. But what do you do, right? If you are selling direct to consumer or even a wholesale, you've got to basically buy the inventory or sit on it, right, until you do have somebody buy it. And so how do you manage it? How do you navigate? How do you know what's enough inventory? Because that's one of the things. If you watch Shark Tank, and I highly recommend, if you are somebody that wants to start a business or you're an entrepreneur, watch Shark Tank, because a lot of the questions that they ask are very similar, right? When they ask, how much inventory do you have? Sometimes they're like, I don't have much, because I've sold through and it's really difficult because the supply chain and I'm waiting, right, which we'll talk about in a second. Sometimes they're like, I've got $500,000 in inventory, and they're like, what are you talking about? Why do you have so much inventory? Because all of your cash, while it's sitting in your warehouse as inventory, is dead, right? You can't do anything with it until you sell through, right? Nobody's gonna give you typically nobody's going to give you like a line of credit on inventory that you actually have unless people are in the business of, or I should say in the same business. That I'm getting off track. When you're starting a business, you have no idea, right? You've got to, you hope it's going to be like, oh my God, crazy successful, right? But one of the big mistakes that a lot of entrepreneurs make, they think, okay, it's going to be crazy, nuts, crazy, ridiculous, successful. And so they're like, all right, I've got $100,000. I'm going to spend like 80% of it on inventory because I can turn that $100,000 or that $80,000 into $3 million, $4 million, $5 million. Now, until you know or have some idea of what the actual conversion rate is going to be, what you're actually going to be able to sell, and you figure out that conversion mechanism, I would say err on the side of be conservative. Because the worst thing you could potentially do is have all this money tied up in inventory and not be able to sell it and have all these expenses, because you're going to have expenses, right? Whether or not it's rent, whether or not it's employees, whether or not it's advertising or paid traffic, you're going to have expenses. And one of the worst positions or situations you could possibly be in is to have all this inventory that you have and you're like, yeah, if I sell through, it's going to be a lot of money, but you don't have enough money in order to run your business. And so I would say err on the side of being very, very conservative first, like right out of the gate. Now, one of the things that people are like, but what if I run out, right? This is a big issue that a lot of people have. They're like, what if I run out? I don't want to run out, because if I run out, that means I'm out and I can't sell. Do not be afraid to run out. If you run out, that's an amazing problem, right? Now you've got all this money that you've acquired from selling out of the product. Now you can invest it into buying a little bit more. You know, it's that whole like launch scenario. A lot of online retailers, or I should say influencers or entrepreneurs, they build up a lot of hype, right? It's limited runs. They're buying a set amount. And like say, you know, you're doing an apparel company. They buy a set amount of this t-shirt in small, this t-shirt in medium, large, right? That whole thing. You build up the hype and then bang, you try to sell it, and whatever doesn't sell, now you're like, all right, what am I gonna do? The worst thing that you can do for one of these flash sort of drop type models is sit on a lot of inventory that is seasonal, right? That's one of the big problems that some of these online influencers face, is that they will overestimate the demand, overestimate the uptake in terms of sales, and they're sitting on a lot of inventory. That's one of the reasons why apparel is incredibly challenging, because you've got to estimate the amount of small, medium, large, extra large in the various colors, the various sizes, knowing that whatever you don't sell, either you're gonna have to like just crazy discount it, get it out like I did with Enemy and the large sizes, or you're gonna sit on a bunch of money, a bunch of inventory that's dead and you can't do anything with it, reinvest it or use it for growing your business. Err on the side of being conservative I should say be realistic. Don't think the best case scenario is gonna happen, because it rarely ever does. Now, what happens if you do sell out? What happens if you start selling and you're like, wow, this is really going great. I've got some money. What do I do? How do I invest it? When do I buy more inventory? And that comes down to you figuring out your supply chain. You know, what we are facing now, supply chains and lead times are much longer than they used to be. Packaging, shipping, everything is taking longer. And so when you're doing your projections, once you sort of get your feel and your feet under you in terms of, you know, how you're getting and how you're moving the different products, you've got to take that into consideration and account. And so for Tiege Hanley, for Pete and Pedro, we know that lead times have gotten longer. And so if we think, okay, we want to have 3 months of inventory on hand, because we know that typically it takes 2 months to get our product, and we don't want to run it like super close or tight. So we give about a month in terms of a cushion of product, because once again, the more product you have sitting on shelves and the duration at which you have that product sitting on shelves, that's just money sitting on the shelf that you could potentially deploy in other ways, develop new products, you know, test different advertising mechanisms, hire more employees, because that's the thing, those fixed costs, they're the things that you really can't get around, right? And you don't want to be in a position where you're out of money, you've got a lot of products sitting on shelves that's not moving, and you can't pay rent, you can't pay your bills, you can't actually fund the advertising that you need to fund in order to sell the products or the money you have sitting on the shelf. Is this making any sense? You've got to understand and know what lead times are, because that honestly is one of the big components to figuring out how much you should buy, how much you should reorder, knowing that you need some amount of inventory as kind of like safety stock. If you know that, okay, at this level, boom, this is going to be my indicator or trigger for a reorder of that specific product. The other thing you need to remember is that you need to have extra cash, right? Now, when you're starting a business, it's all about the extra money, right? That profit. Knowing that when you sell a phone, it costs you $100. You get those $400 if you're selling direct to consumer. Don't spend all $400. You should be smart enough to realize, okay, if I want to grow, all right, if I sell out, I want to make sure that I have enough to replenish the inventory that I just sold, so $100, plus buy an additional one for each one that I sold, so $200. So out of that $400 that you sold, or I should say that you made, $200, you got to set it aside, right? That other $200 that you have profit, that is what you are going to use to basically pay your staff, pay your bills, but then the leftover or the delta, that is something that you can take and put into your pocket. But what I'd recommend, don't put it all into your pocket, because you never know when there's something that arises, like shipping costs increase, or you have an opportunity to maybe buy something else or invest some other area in your business. You need to make sure that you've got enough money or credit. Now with credit, that's a whole nother story. Ideally, a lot of companies like to have terms, right? When you place an order for new product, a lot of times they'll say, okay, it's 50% up front in terms of a deposit to place the order. And then you've got to pay another 50% or whatever it is in order to have them ship your products. Now, if you know, okay, I'm going to be able to sell through, I'm going to, you can use credit if you can get credit from these different vendors and different manufacturers. Until you have a track record, until you've built up enough credit, nobody's going to give it to you. One thing that I do, right? Amex, this bad boy is like, I spend every month, I spend on average around $400,000 on this credit card. And I pay it off every month. Amex is amazing because you can get points. And so my wife is like, I call her the Amazon queen, because she is using all I've tied my points to, my Amazon account, and she's just like, she's like, did you pay your bill yet? She's like, oh, the points just hit. But yeah, I'm spending about $400,000 to $500,000 in inventory, in, advertising. Everything for Pete and Pedro goes on this credit card. And so it's great because I get points and all that. Now, I know some of you are like, dude, that's a horrible waste of points. Don't do that. I get it. Whatever. It's how I roll. You can roll any way you want. So now the question is, how do you keep track of it all, right? And it's art and science, right? There's a little bit of both. You've just got to get into the numbers. Now, for me, for Pete and Pedro, for Tiege Hanley, every single month, we do an inventory, right? At the beginning of the month, boom, how much inventory do we have? And then we've got historic data in terms of, okay, we have a spreadsheet, this really like complex, like crazy spreadsheet. How much does the product cost? And then if your product costs change, you update that, right? How many months of stock you have. Actually, let me see if I can, I'm actually not gonna show you that because it shows for everything. But in terms of like my prices and costs and how much I'm selling and stuff like that, I'm open, but not that open. Anyway, we have what's called a red report. It's like, okay, we know that we need this much inventory, this much stock. And then you basically are going to determine how much of excess inventory you want to keep on hand or in stock. Like I mentioned in last vlog, at Pete and Pedro right now, I've got about $1 million tied up in inventory. Now, I'm going to be selling through that, and then on a monthly basis, I will place or reorder specific things that get to that red report, or the quantity that we need to reorder, because we're going to either A, run out if we keep the same sales trajectory, or the supply chain gets effed up or whatever. And so every month we look, okay, this is what the monthly order is going to be for this month. And then you place it. And I'm telling you right now, things have gotten so out of whack and so crazy with the supply chain. it's like you want to have a little extra or backup. Something else that I'm having to face is over ordering packaging. Packaging is something that you never think, you're like, okay, well, you know, what's the big deal? Man, packaging is a huge, big deal. And so you may have to, for me, I've ordered like what's an example? Powder, right? For powder containers. We wanted to order, okay, let's order another 10,000 units. And we have, you know, we know how long it typically takes. They're like, we can't find the packaging that we were using. We're like, what? And so after a lot of, looking, a lot of contact, everybody was out of packaging. And so it's like, okay, we found a vendor, but the minimum order quantity is 50,000 units. And so what do? It's like, all right, well, I've got to now sit on that 50,000, you know, I don't need to order 50,000, you know, completed packages or bottles, because that's a lot of money, and that's way more powder than we need to sit on, or that I should be sitting on, because once again, it's opportunity cost for that cash. And so what do? Okay, I'm gonna buy the 50,000 units, I'm gonna fill, say 20,000 or 10,000 now, knowing that I've got some back stock. But once again, all the packaging that I've got or that I had to buy is cash that I've tied up in packaging that I'm not technically going to be able to sell for, in some cases, like a year. Sitting on inventory is a strain on your business. Now, for companies that go into retail, right, you think, oh, great, you know, awesome. I just landed Target, or I landed whatever. Think about the amount that you're going to need then, because this is potentially like Tiege Hanley. You know, if we go into some big box retailer, we need a certain amount that we're able to send to them. And the reality is that a lot of these vendors have terms. They're not paying you right up front. They may have 30-day terms or 60-day terms or 90-day terms after it sells. Not when they get it, but they've got to sell through. And so in order for you to have those opportunities, you got to make sure that you've got enough cash or the ability to fund the purchase orders in order to basically grow your business or continue to be able to scale the rest of your business. And a lot of companies can't. And so what happens, you end up needing to get loans or sell equity in your business in order to simply fund the purchase orders. You hear that on Shark Tank a lot. A lot of people are like, or the sharks will be like, you know, or the entrepreneurs will be like, will you fund future purchase orders? And they'll be like, yes. So they'll go in for a certain amount of money knowing that they've got all these big opportunities like a Target or a Walmart or whatever. But in order to have enough cash, in order to keep their business going and fund the purchase order for these opportunities, they need money. And so a lot of times the sharks will be like, yeah, I will loan the business or fund it, but I'm going to get some type of interest on the money that I am having to invest in able to, or I'm investing in these purchase orders for you then, or for us as a business or company to have the opportunity with the Targets, the Walmarts, the Nordstroms, whatever. So anyway, I'm a little bit all over the place, and I know that hopefully that made sense. If that made sense, guys, down below, be like, yeah, if I got a little value from that. Even if you learn or get some piece of nugget of information or value from that explanation of the $100 cell phone, hopefully you did. If you didn't, I'm sorry. Down below, let me know. Yo, Alpha. Cool. Yo, Alpha. I'm even more confused now. But bottom line, cash flow is one of the #1 things that you've got to pay attention to when it comes to your business. Marketing is one of the most important things you need to do in order to sell it. But then how you manage your inventory and how you manage your cash is going to a lot of times depend on, you know, sort of your philosophy. And that's the other thing. There's no right or wrong. It's really up to you. If you want to have a year's worth of inventory, that's fine. Sometimes now you have to plan for having a year's worth of inventory, even if you don't want it, because of the current state of affairs of the economy. Something else to pay attention to is the cost for gas, right? Gas is going to impact cost of goods, because the shipping companies, they're not just going to eat it, right? They're just not going to be like, okay, my fuel went up 30%, 40%, 50%. No, they're going to pass the cost on to you. And so just understand that everything that's going on with the economy and inflation, it is going to impact your business, and you got to make sure that you can endure it. Does this mean that you may need to raise your prices? Yes, it may. And unfortunately, there's no getting around the fact, like Tiege Hanley, we had to increase our prices a few months ago. right? By like $5 because everything was going up, but we never raised the prices for like 4 years. Pete and Pedro, same thing, got to raise the price because costs are going up and your margin will shrink. The smaller the margin, the less money you have to deploy for extra inventory or for paying yourself, your employees, or growing your business. Speaking of business, I know that was long-winded. Now I'm going to attempt to get to some of your business questions. If you have a business question, start it with business question and ask it. Each week we try to get to a few of them. Now I'm going to get to a few of yours. Hopefully I do a better job answering them than I did the cash flow question. The first business question, let's try that again. The first business question comes from our friend Michael Moore. He says, when you were starting getting into business, who was your biggest mentor and what was the most important lesson you learned from them? A horrible answer for you, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I didn't really have a mentor. I kind of figured things out like as I've gone. In terms of now, I guess I don't really have like mentors. I've got just, I guess, friends that I've met over the years that are fellow entrepreneurs. And I guess the most important one was Antonio Centeno, because he was the first person that kind of reached out across the aisle and was like, hey, come on, let's try something. And up until this point, I was very like, I don't want to be friends with anybody. I am either going to win or I'm going to lose. And if you come into my life, you're either going to steal something from me or, and so it was a very closed-minded approach to kind of the world. And he was the person that was like, no, let's, come together, let's meet, and we can all help each other. And that was probably the biggest lesson that I learned is not to have that scarcity mindset where it's either I'm winning and you're losing or you're winning and I'm losing. It's we can help each other. And from that point, when I met him and met all of these other amazing entrepreneurs, that's when everything started to really grow and scale. Plus, I had somebody that I could talk to that understood what I was going through. And so he was definitely a very critical and pivotal person in my entrepreneurial development. But great question. The next question comes from our friend Uncharted Leather. He says, how would you market from zero, meaning without influencer following, a handmade leather goods business? Most of the business topics on this channel include having available budgets, money to spend on ads. I'm curious, how would you do it with no such marketing budget and no followers? Margin in leatherwork are small. I've started this channel to document my craft. Thanks, Aaron. So I went to your website or your YouTube channel and I watched your, I sped through it a little bit, your ASMR, is that what it's called? ASMR, it was really cool. So essentially what he did was he started from zero, like a sheet of leather, and then documented or showed the process of creating a slim leather minimal wallet. And it was amazing. What I would probably do, because at the end, you did what you should did. You did kind of like like an end set or an end card saying, hey, if you want to check them out or grab one for yourself, you say the website, right? I would do that in the beginning, or I would keep your website on the screen just as text, like at the bottom or whatever, or like grab yours like the entire time. And I think you also had it like linked or pinned to the top comment in the video. So you released that video about 7 days ago, which was great. I loved it. But you also did some stories or some shorts, which I think were amazing. You're doing everything you should be doing in terms of you're starting to put yourself out there. I would also look for other channels that do leather work and see what their topics are or things that they have done that have gotten popular, and then kind of duplicate that, or maybe like a how-to, if you want to, like how to do X, Y, and Z. A lot of how-to content is really popular and great, and there are a lot of people that are searching for leather work or leather products. And so just continuing to feed that beast, right? Posting your stuff on Instagram. If you don't have an Instagram account, start one. Facebook, you're doing everything right. It's about putting yourself out there. It's about linking to all of your information, and you're going to grow it. You're going to be amazed at what happens if you just continue to put in the work and put it out there. So congratulations, great job, and I'm proud of you for doing it. It's not easy, but it's definitely going to pay off, I promise. So the next business question comes from our friend Evan Danner. Sorry for butchering that, buddy. He says, hey, Aaron, not sure if this has been answered or not, but what are some books that you could recommend for someone that can help them understand business as a concept? I don't know because I don't read. And so it's something that I've had to basically be honest about. But I know that a lot of you do. So down below, guys, if you have a book that you could recommend, please list it, because this would be a great opportunity to sort of share some resources that you might have used or that you know of that you have tried or used that you think are awesome to help everybody. So down below, if you have a business book, maybe start it with business book and list your business book. The next business question comes from our friend Abdu Fair Lifestyle. Sorry for butchering that. He says, hey Aaron, I've been watching your vlogs for a while now. Every time you talk about Tiege or Pete and Pedro and how you deal with products and marketing, your knowledge baffles me. I hope that's a good thing. I'm trying to start a new thing in my life, which includes product selling. Let me read more. I know from watching your vlogs that you've tried a bunch of things before, but my question is, and I hope it doesn't come off as weird, did you learn business or marketing in college? Have a degree in it, or just learn it from experience? I don't have a degree in marketing or business. Do I have any hope? Yes, you've got hope. No, I didn't learn any of it from college. I do have a degree, but it didn't help me. You learn everything from getting your feet dirty or your hands dirty, your feet wet, and just going out there and trying. You know, for me, that's how I learn. I am not obviously somebody that reads a lot. I'm somebody that consumes content, but it's just about trial and error. It's about you having an idea and then figuring it out and the process along the way. In the age of the internet, like, we have never lived in a more amazing time than we do now in terms of somebody with no or limited knowledge learning for free online. Like, anything you can think about, you could basically Google search it and find a ton of information. Go on YouTube, ton of information. Sites like Skillshare, ton of information that essentially could be free, you know? And so learn on the fly is what I did, but also those business books could potentially help. But the business books a lot of times are going to be like overarching in terms of a theme. But for you, if you're looking to start a business, you know, first it's what do you want to do? What do you want to start? And then you figure it out from there. But congratulations, and if I can do it, you can do it. And the last business question is one that I hate to answer, but I'm going to. It's from our friend Kevin Pardes. He says, how can we attend StyleCon? StyleCon, or Menfluential Conference, it died basically with COVID. Interestingly enough, like Antonio and I, we did it for, I believe, like 7 years. And it was just a ton of work. And I think we were a little bit burnt out. And this was before COVID. Now, I would love to have something, but I don't have it in me right now or Antonio to start it again. Someday I think we're going to do some type of like meetup, but right now everything is so crazy that I'm trying to bite off something, because literally it's almost like a part-time job to put a conference on. You've got to sell it, you've got to prepare for it, you've got to get ready for it, you've got to logistically, and right now we don't have it in it or in us, but we're dealing with, you know, just like you with everything, and we're just trying to keep our head above water, honestly. But great question. Someday, I promise we will do something. I don't know when, but someday I promise we will, because it was one of the highlights of my year. It was just a lot of work for it became like we lost money. It wasn't something where we like made a bunch of money. It was not a conference that we're like, oh, we're going to sell 1,000 tickets or 2,000 tickets. It was super small. We limited it to the capacity of Ambient Plus Studio, the place that we held it. But it was an amazing event. And someday I hope we can do something, even if it's not on that large a scale. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. And if you have a business question down below, start it with business question and ask it. You guys, we love and thank, what am I even trying to say? Thank you for following. Thank you for being a part of this. And hopefully you got something out of the whole like cash flow thing that I talked about. See, I can't even talk. I'm tired. I love you. We love you more than our double monk trap shoes. If you got a business question, start with a business question and ask it. Next week, some more updates and answering your amazing questions. Thanks, guys. See you soon.